Bruins Beat is brought to you by PrizePicks and the Gametime app.
And welcome into the Bruins Beat, presented by PrizePicks. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $50 back when you play your first $5 lineup. And presented by Gametime. Go use that promo code CLNS to get $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. I'm Evan Marinofsky. That is Joe Haggerty. Haggs, what is up?
What's up, Evan? How you doing?
I'm good. It's a busy time of year, we were saying before.
Yep.
I prep tournaments all weekend. You, I assume, have multiple with your son, and it just goes on. And your daughter's playing too, so like that, probably you get games there as well.
My daughter is playing, and she went to a Middlesex Islanders girls team practice last night, and because she had a friend that's on the team. And the coach actually asked her at the end of the practice if she wanted to play on the team for the rest of the year. So she was pretty excited about that. It was cool. He went over and said something to her at the end of the practice and was like, "Hey, do you want to play with us? Do you want to be on this team?" So it was like a pretty cool moment for her.
And you're like, "Damn it, that's another schedule I've got to follow." And then more drives.
But you know what? Kids remember those conversations with the coaches. Like little kids, when the coach comes over and says something like that to them, it's incredibly meaningful, and the kids remember it. So it's cool that happened. So yes, she's now going to be on two teams, I think, for the rest of the year. And last weekend we went to the J Peak tournament. Finn went up there with his Avalanche team, and that was pretty fun. They played some teams from Canada, from the Ottawa area. They played the Maine Moose, who were very good. They're up by Augusta, and a few other teams. So it was a pretty fun tournament. The only thing I was pissed about, because obviously the J Peak tournament is great in Vermont because they have the water park there, right? So at the resort. So it's like full on like hockey tournament. The kids are like having a blast. They're exhausting themselves at the water park in between games. It's like the perfect hockey tournament setting. But rookie move by me, because it was the first time I'd been at J Peak. I didn't notice the outdoor hot tub next to the water park until I was checked out of the hotel, the resort, and leaving at the end of the weekend. So I'm going to have to get to that one next time.
I'm always shocked, and I'm not shocked, but I think it's cool how a lot of these places like a Waterville or J Peak or Lake Placid, Clifton Park, their economy in the winter is like 70% hockey tournaments. Like that's what generates money. That there's restaurants because of it. They go all out hosting families, and it's really cool.
J Peak does a smart thing, and it's a great tournament. Highly recommend it. It was the first time we'd done Waterville Valley 3 times. That's a fun tournament too. We've done Lake Placid a couple times. This was the first time we did J Peak. Highly recommend it. Great setting for a hockey tournament. It was really well run. The teams were all good. It was very competitive. But like they also are smart where they do it. They do one in November and they do one in early December. Or they do one in October, I think, in early December. But it's basically before the ski resort is open at all. And there was about half of the trails open last weekend when we were there. So it's not fully operational yet, the J Peak ski resort. So it's really smart to supplement before they get full bore skiers for the rest of the year to do the hockey tournaments at the beginning of the year. And the rink is like right next to the resort. It's right at the mountain. Beautiful rink. They have like one area in a corner of the rink where it's like a bunch of Adirondack chairs set up in the corner right by the glass. So a bunch of parents can camp out in the Adirondack chairs and have their own like cheering section down there. So fantastic setup for the tournament, and the rink is awesome too, and a great experience, and really smart by them to do it. So, and they just actually started doing tournaments at North Conway up by Storyland too. There must be a rink.
I'm
up
surprised
that way.
it took them that long to start doing them up there.
I know. Haven't done that one, but it's a great setting as well.
Anytime like I hear about tournaments now, like not to sound old, but like when I was a kid, we did Lake Placid, Clifton Park, and it makes you wonder. There was 1 year or 2 years we did Springfield, Mass.
Yes,
like I think back and I'm like,
too. Yes,
yeah, but I'm thinking back, I'm like, the team manager would send out a list of tournaments, and somehow you idiot parents picked Springfield. Like, how does that happen? There's so many great places that are way better with kids. Springfield, you couldn't go to liquor stores after like 5 o'clock and everything. And
you
and
can send them to the Basketball Hall of Fame. Big whoop in Springfield.
Oh, yeah, it was a great time. And obviously as kids, we only care about mini hockey. Like, that's the big thing. But I think back, I'm like, you idiots picked Springfield? Like, all the options, and you chose Springfield that year. And sometimes there were two, but they're expensive tournaments. They're not cheap. So, like, you only do 1 or 2 a year per team.
Yes.
That was when I was growing up. So,
yep, same deal now.
Yeah.
And Finn did that the Springfield Picks tournament. Is that the one you did?
I don't remember what it was, but they did it a couple times. It was a shame. It wasn't that good.
The Bruins, and the year we did it, there were only 3 other teams in the bracket, and they were all like top 10 in the country on my hockey rankings. It was like the Syracuse Nationals, the New Jersey Titans,
it's insane,
and Mascon United, who was like the number 1 team, I think, in their age group that year. So it was the competition was pretty stiff in that
clearly,
and the rinks, like the Springfield rink, we didn't even do. We ended up at the Enfield rink, where Mascon's like home rink. Man, what a dumpy rink that is. Like, small rooms, none of the doors worked on the benches. I was coaching and none of the doors friggin' closed. And you had to you basically had to do an elbow check or a shoulder check into the door to get it open when kids were coming off the ice. So whoever owns the Enfield rinks where Mascon United plays, hey, why don't you put some money back into the rink and actually like spruce it up a little bit and make some locker rooms that are more than a broom closet. Like, spend some cash there, folks.
Probably one of those owners who ons like 100 rinks. That's probably what it is.
They might be named after a bear or something. I don't know.
We're not getting into that. We're not doing that now. We got people like punching their steering wheel, being like, "Talk about the freaking Bruins. Shut up, Haggs, about your kid." And Evan, stop egging him on and talking about your youth hockey tournaments. We're talking about what we want to talk about, but we will. Let's get
the one thing I take from all this, Evan, is don't send your kids to Springfield for a hockey tournament.
That's
or
right.
Marlboro.
That's right.
Your big tournament should not be in Marlboro. Don't do that.
I agree. Go somewhere nice. Use it as a vacation, as you said. Like they spruce it up for the parents, which is nice. Yes. Bruins are on their own little trip out west. 4 games in. We're doing this on Thursday morning, so the Oilers game is still like 12 hours away. As we do this, 2-2 through 2 games. They got crushed in their first 2. They do really well in their next 2. Where are you at? How do you feel about this?
I talked about this with Connor on the Pucks with Haggs podcast yesterday as well. That should be dropping today, so you may be able to listen to these podcasts back to back and get some great insight. I basically feel the same way that I've felt about this team all along, which is playoff team, most definitely. I think even in their lowest moments, even in the pit of suckitude that was that first 20 games of the season, before they made the coaching change, they never really fell out of a playoff spot. They were always a wild card team. It's
miraculous, by the way. They never fell out.
Well, it's miraculous, but it's like they managed to still play well enough to be in there. And it also says something about the Atlantic Division and Eastern Conference that, there's not enough teams that are really emerging from the depths to take it away from a team like the Bruins either. So it's a little bit of both, but it tells me that they are still a playoff team, most definitely. But they look like they've got enough flaws where they're going to be a first-round exit. It's going to be a quick postseason trip for them. They don't look like a team that has enough to beat good teams. They look more like they fall apart and get beaten most of the time by good teams. And, the games that really got away from them this year, and one of them being that Winnipeg Jets game, Winnipeg, Dallas, Carolina, they got spanked, like embarrassed by all 3 of those teams, and they were road games, and they let it get away in the third period, and a lot of their flaws were exposed, and they kind of cracked. They broke and cracked as a team in those third period situations in those games and let it get away. And that tells me that when they get to the playoffs as currently constituted, they're not going to be able to beat a good team. Like, that kind of stuff is going to happen. They are going to crack, they are going to break, and the flaws in this team are going to get exposed, and they're not going to be able to beat a good team, and you're always going to be playing good teams in the playoffs. So basically, I like what I see as far as they're a playoff team. I think they've got enough good players to get into the playoffs. But unless they really change their DNA and maybe getting another legit impact player that can kind of drive a line, that can kind of create offense, that can certainly finish, maybe that changes the equation a bit and that tilts it a little bit more towards them being competitive and maybe winning a round or two. But I feel like right now they are a playoff team that is not going to do much and not going to make much noise in the playoffs. And I've felt that way for a while. I love the win against Calgary. I thought it was a nice turning point kind of win. I feel more of that being like something they can build on than the St. Louis win they had, where a lot of people were saying, "All right, there's the Bruins. They came back in St. Louis. They figured it out. Now now they're going to go on a run." I didn't think that at the time. I just saw I continued to see a lot of problems and issues with that team, and they were almost unrecognizable to me amidst that stretch, the way that they were playing. I feel like they're getting back to more of the way they need to play, and they're getting back to more of a confident team with some hard-nosed resolve that can come back in games like they did in Calgary and do some things. But I still don't think there's enough there for them to be considered a serious contender at this point.
I agree, and it sounds insane to say after the Calgary win, but that hasn't been the norm this year. Like, right. and you hit it on the head with, think about them going up against a good team. Right now, they would play Florida in the first round.
Yeah.
Right? Over seven games. Right? If you averaged out how they do against good teams this year over 7 games, they lose most of the time, or they crack, or they break, or things get out of hand. You know, you're down 2-1 after one period in Dallas, you end up losing like 7 or 8-1. And that's a problem. That has been more of the norm this year. And I can't remember the last time a Bruins team had that issue. And so,
well, you expect it to happen every once in a while. Now that we've seen it a few times. This is not an outlier thing where it happened once. This has happened
it's not.
3 times now.
The outlier is what happened in Calgary.
Right.
That's the outlier. And so that's a problem. And that's why, to me, unless they can build off this, which I don't have a ton of confidence that they can. I mean, they've been playing better. We can all agree on that. They're 8-4 since Sacco took over. That's great.
Yep.
So they're playing a little bit more like a playoff team, but they're not playing like a top-end playoff team. You're not putting money on this team winning the cup. You're not saying, honey, we're not having vacations in June this year because the Bruins might be in the cup. You're not doing that. And so I think that's the issue where, for me, you look at the past couple of years, maybe not so much last year, but there was a chance, especially 22-23. There was a legit chance. I don't have that feeling this year. I think they're a middle of the pack team. They're right in the middle. Sometimes they're maybe, on paper 12 or 13th best. Sometimes they feel much lower. End of the Montgomery tenure kind of comes to mind there. So I'm not at the point, I said going into this trip, I said this trip is going to be sort of season defining. If they go out there and they go 4-0-1 or 5-0, it's okay, this team is legit. They're coming out of it. They're sparked. They're playing well. They would have had to overcome, big time opponents like Winnipeg. Or we're going to see that they're going to be selling off at the deadline. They go 1-4-0 or 1-3-1 or whatever it is, 0-5.
Yep.
They've done this trip sort of in line with everything they've done this year. They're 2-2.
It doesn't move the needle at all one way or the other, really, for me.
No.
Even if they win the game in Edmonton and end the trip 3-2, that's good. It's encouraging, and I think this is a really tough road trip. So being able to do that is impressive in a way, but it's not really moving the needle as far as changing what I think about this team, what I think about their long-range prospects, and frankly, what I think they're going to do as soon as they get into the playoffs. Like I said, every team you play in the postseason is good, so they're good caliber teams. Look at the Bruins' track record this year against good playoff teams. It's not good. It's not even 500. It's a losing record. It's a lot of goals allowed. It's a bad goal differential. They just look like a team that is going to do everything they can to get into the postseason and exhaust their abilities and reach their potential by getting there. And once they get there, they're kind of going to get exposed for some of the things they can't do, as far as taking penalties, as far as not being able to score, as far as, having breakdowns at bad times, and full credit to Joe Sacco for getting them to start playing better defense, for getting them to have more structure in the D zone and playing better from the net out. And I thought it was a great sign for him and his potential prospects at being named the full-time head coach, that they responded when he called the timeout 2-0.
I was going to say.
Down 2-0, they gave up 2 goals in 27 seconds in the second period. Both were like slot shots, totally like bad coverage in the slot, letting grade A chances. And they were like, that was like the third or fourth time Calgary had a great slot chance in that game. And they finally scored on a couple towards the beginning of the second period, one right after another. And the Bruins were clearly reeling at that point and just hadn't been playing good hockey. And Saka was calm about it, didn't like rant and rave, didn't like swear them up and down, didn't berate them or try to embarrass them or whip them like dogs. He just calmly said, like, we got to be better in the D zone. Like, if you want to win this game, you got to pull it together structure-wise in the D zone. We got to protect the slot. You can't allow you do what you're doing. And that approach worked. It allowed them to go out, figure out what they needed to do defensively, tighten things up, not allow those kind of chances moving forward, and show the resolve to come back and win that game. And I'm not sure that was happening earlier this year. I do not think Montgomery had that kind of composure on the bench. I just don't. I didn't see it at times where he was screaming at guys, where he was pushing guys in the back, where he sometimes looked befuddled on the bench, like he didn't have any answers, and he would be like that in the post game as well when you asked him what was going on.
Like when he assaulted Brad Marchand.
But like I just didn't see that kind of like calm from Montgomery and that poise from the coach. And so much of the time, the players take on the traits of the coach, the personality of the coach, the confidence level of the coach, the emotional level of the coach, like all of that stuff. They take cues from the way the coach is acting, and that's how the team and a lot of times the players will operate. And I think it was a great sign that he called that timeout and they responded in a really positive way like they did. So good sign for him. But like you said, and like I've said, I'm not sure that win in Calgary completely changes the way I feel about this team. And I really don't think at this point this trip changes the way I feel about this team either, though, even if they win in Edmonton and come out with a winning record on the road trip. I think that's a good thing, but I think that's something a playoff team should be able to do, is go out on a 5-game trip to Canada and come out 3-2.
I agree. And I do think, Sacco has shown well.
Yep.
Like Sacco since has been a good replacement. I want to talk more about that. Some other guys that have impressed. We get into some Trent Frederic rumors. But first, our friends over at PrizePicks. They're the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks, America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with PrizePicks. Haggs, I was saying to Connor yesterday on Poke the Bear, I was like, I don't know if it's because Christmas is on a Wednesday this year or what the deal is, but it hasn't felt as much like the holidays this year. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's because I was walking in Beacon Hill last night in the rain and it was December 18th and I'm like, what the hell is this? And it's like 55 degrees, but I don't know. So PrizePicks can help with that. It's the best place.
Get yourself some kids, Evan. You'll start feeling like it's Christmas.
Well, yeah, I know the Christmas list and everything. I'll work on the kids part. We'll see how that goes.
There you go.
The best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports. My girlfriend just like passed out hearing that. You can now win, as I said, up to 1,000 times your money on PrizePicks. PrizePicks now offers MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. Join now because the holiday season, PrizePicks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Picksmas. It's Picksmas. There's Christmas, and then right there with it is Picksmas.
The 12 days of Picksmas.
Yes. The 12 days of Picksmas. The kids this year, they said, Daddy, what do we want for Picksmas this year? This is what we want for Picksmas. They didn't mention Christmas. They just said Picksmas.
A partridge at less than 0.5 hits for Catagrotia. That's what it is.
Exactly. You sound like a true Philadelphia Flyers fan saying that. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. So on this trip, it's been interesting because and it goes past this trip. take away the first 2 losses, but like Pavel Zacha's been scoring a little bit more.
Yep.
I thought Elias Lindholm had his best game as a Bruin against Calgary, which it's like, dude, where is that all the time? Because again, the production has just been so off from what it should be. And even if he didn't score against Calgary, I still felt like he had a really impactful game. I haven't felt
that's
that
an area where if he starts playing more like that consistently, that could change the equation a little bit. That's the kind of thing you look at and say, my opinion on this team might change a little bit if Elias Lindholm starts playing like that all the time. Like, and that was encouraging about that Calgary win, is you saw some things and said, all right, if this is consistent, maybe like, things will change a little bit. But like, he's really like a pivotal guy. Like, he needs to really like step up in a huge way to change the way I feel about this team and the way I think their trajectory for this year, for sure.
Completely. And I think that's when we talked early in the season, the things that were missing were Lindholm wasn't producing, Pastrnak, Marchand, your top guys, Zacha, were not producing.
Yep.
And I think one of the themes of the last 12 games is Pastrnak has been producing. There's still an iffiness with the puck. There's still like, it feels a little like he's not as confident as he normally is, whether it be shots or stick handling, but still like he's producing. Great passing, as we saw last year.
Yeah,
Marchand has started scoring again over the last batch of games. Zacha,
the penalties, the penalties on the first shift of the game need to stop for David Pastrnak, though. That too. That to stop. Like,
yes,
that's one of the biggest issues and it's happened multiple times this year. Like, I was talking to an old Bruins player not too long ago, and like that was the thing. That they
Carl Corzini? You're talking to Carl?
Yes, it might have been. That's the one.
I'm kidding. I'm not serious about that.
They kind of laughed about it, and they were like, I remember seeing, I saw this talk about like, we need to stop taking penalties, and then they were like, and then the next game, Pasta takes a penalty 9 seconds of the game. I was like, yeah, that's not really what anybody's looking for, and like that stuff like needs to like be completely straightened out. Like, there are always going to be issues if one of your leaders is talking the talk but not walking the walk. So like, the offensive zone penalties 9 seconds into a game need to like cease to exist for this Bruins team, because that to my point earlier, that's the kind of stuff you do in the playoffs and it's friggin' game over. You take a high sticking 4-minute major or a double minor penalty, you like 10 seconds, 30 seconds into a game in the first period, you're cooked.
Done.
You're toast.
Done. Yeah, you can't do it. So like, that's the thing. And I think that's one of the things, but that outside of the penalty stuff over this 12-game stretch, I think one of the biggest reasons they have a winning record, they've looked like a little bit better of a team, is their top guys are producing. And even like a Morgan Geekie, like I think we all can agree that, you'd rather have someone else up in that top 6 playing with Zacha and Pastrnak. But he is producing. Like, that's the funny part. He's got 6 points in 6 games. And like, I think if you are going to buy at the deadline, which we'll get into in a bit, I still am not sold on fully buying at this deadline. But if you were to do that, you probably would go out and get a top 6 forward, because this team certainly needs one.
A sniper
for sure. But like, Geekie has done okay. There are offensive zone sequences where I'm like, if they did have someone there who was a little more skilled, those cycles would result to more goals and more high danger chances. But you are getting something out of him, so it's not urgent. But I think that is one of the good things over this last batch of games, is that their top guys are finally producing. And again, we didn't have that at the beginning of the year. So it's encouraging. It's not everything. I know our podcasts this year have mainly been negative, because why would they be positive with the way they're playing?
Right.
But I think that's a little positive over the last little stretch of games. They're doing all right.
Yes. No, they've put up in individual games here or there, they've put up bigger offensive numbers. They're definitely some of their bigger names, and the players you would expect to produce a little bit more, are returning to form, and Water is kind of seeking its level with some of those players, where they were so bad in the first 20 games and they way underperformed, and now they're starting to get back to what they should be, what they usually are. And you knew that was going to happen, right? You knew most of those players that were underperforming were going to revert back to form, and they weren't as bad as they had shown early in the season. But all that being said, like, they're still not scoring enough on a regular basis to be a threat, to be a team that is going to be able to get away with not playing stingy, tight, disciplined defense, hard-nosed defense in the defensive zone that has to play that style and always stick to that style. And if they stray away from that style, they're going to be roadkill in the NHL, because most nights they are, and we saw this in the game against Seattle, right? Once they got down, what was it, 3-1, 4-1? I think it was 3-1. It was game over. Like it
felt like they were headed that way in Calgary when it was 3 when Lomberg scored. It was like, oh, this is over.
Yes, and they reversed course on that. But in Seattle, you could tell the players were like, we're done. Like, there was a back-breaking goal, and that was it. And they were out of it at that point. And they let that one a little bit get away from them in the third period as well. But they do not have the offensive firepower, the offensive ability, the players, the makeup on their roster right now to do anything but play really tough defense and pay close attention to detail in the defensive zone, covering the slot, clearing pucks from the net, making the net front be a miserable place to be, blocking shots. Like, all of that stuff has to happen, and they have to play that way. That is just the DNA of this team. Now, what I would do now, and I think we're heading into this territory, Evan, is I think you have to start thinking about what are you going to do with the forwards in order to make room for Matt Poitras from Providence. Goals in 7 straight games for the Providence Bruins. Scored again last night in a loss to the Phantoms. He has been absolutely in fuego, and he's been part of a Providence team that is scoring a metric crap ton of goals over the last 2-3 weeks. He's basically led an offensive surge with that Providence team since he went down there. And it's, on one level, it is the perfect example of player development, where you make the right call with a young player, you put him down in the AHL in Providence, you let him play in every situation, you let him play more than like 11 minutes a night, and he's playing power play, he's playing penalty kill, he's playing with skilled players, he's playing in a top 6 role, top line role, and all of a sudden he regains his confidence, he gets his mojo back, and he is like doing damage down there. And when he comes back to the NHL, he's going to be a much more confident player, and he's going to be much more creative, much more of a killer offensively. Like, that's going to happen when he comes back up. So I think it's getting to the point now where he's been so good that you have to start thinking long range, like, what are you going to do to make room for him? Because he needs to play in a proper role. He needs to be playing with the right players. You probably want him to play center, even though he can play wing. And you start to think of what you can do before trade deadline, before you bring in another like sniper, another impact player. Like, what can you do to maximize it and wring the most offense out of this Bruins team while entering Matt Poitras into the equation? And I think you need to start seriously thinking about putting Charlie Coyle on the wing, playing him maybe potentially with like a Brad Marchand on the wing, and Elias Lindholm. You could put the two of them together with Brad Marchand on a line, putting Poitras as a third line center, moving things around that way. Maybe you try him with Oliver Wahlstrom and see if the two of them can get some chemistry going together. Maybe Trent Frederic there as well. But does this also at some point, open up thinking about trading one of your forwards too? If he comes up and performs really well and plays really well, does that sort of open up avenues to make a trade to improve other areas or to, do something else as well? I think it basically, it opens up a lot of options for you to be able to do things based on the way Poitras has played and based on projecting what he could do in Boston and the kind of just offensive creativity and playmaking and impact kind of play that you think he can bring if he comes back to Boston. Because I think similar to last year where Mason Lowry went down to Providence, had some time down there, really found his game and was very strong for the Bruins in the second half of the year. I think you could see that kind of thing from Poitras coming back up too when he finally comes back up.
I think you can. I want to get into this in terms of how you're constructing or how we're constructing this roster going forward. But first, our friends over at Gametime. Gametime is focused on togetherness this holiday season. That means when you bring people together at live events, the experience is that much better, and it's the perfect gift. Looking for a gift for someone? It is late. This is going to come out December 19th or 20th, 6 days before Christmas. Need something last minute? This is a great gift.
We're talking core memories, Evan.
Core
going
memories.
To a game with your dad, going to show with your family, core memories, Evan, at the holidays. This is what it's all about. Great gift.
Bringing a girlfriend or a boyfriend to a game. Like, this is the perfect thing for it. And again, who does not love a game? And Gametime also has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for live events even easier. So maybe you want to go to something on Christmas Day. Like, the Celtics aren't here on Christmas Day.
I don't think so.
But if they were, that'd be a great example. Or in the days after Christmas, you want to go to a game. Do it right before. Gametime Picks filters out the fluff, show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Again, I love the picks, but I also love all-in pricing. Sometimes I hate on other apps when that ticket's pretty cheap, and then I go and see it's a lot more money because of taxes and all that stuff. I get to see it up front with Gametime, which is awesome. I also get seat views, which give a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. Lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. And Gametime ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off that first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it, Haggs?
Game time.
It's game time. That's what time it is. It's game time.
Yes.
You mentioned an interesting thing with the lineup, because you bring in Oliver Wahlstrom last week, which I love that Elaine Cavalieri already had that kid doing freaking animal noises on TikTok. Like, the minute he gets there, lands in Calgary, and she's like, "You have a second? You have a second?" And he's like, "What? Okay, yeah, sure. New team." And he's, going like oink oink, like camera immediately. Someone in the background yelled like, "Don't do it, Wally. Don't do it." And
that is I want to stay in the NHL. I'm going to make animal sounds and do whatever I have to do. That's basically what that was.
Whatever it takes. That's the equivalent of blocking a shot with your face. You know, like, do whatever it takes.
Yes.
No, Elaine does an amazing job with the TikToks, and everyone knows her on TikTok. Like, all the Bruins fans will reply being like, "Oh my God, Elaine, this is hilarious." Like, they know it's Elaine doing it. I feel like most social media admins, you don't know, and she's been great at doing the TikToks for the Bruins.
I wouldn't know. I'm not on TikTok.
I know. Well, I am
that generation.
I spend too much time on their Hags. It's unfortunate. My screen time is awful. My brain is mush. As a joke, and spoiler alert, nobody tell Finn. I went Christmas shopping and I found an actual skibbity toilet thing at Target, and he hates it. He hates skibbity. He hates that word. Says people have the brain rot when they start saying that stuff. So the joke gift under the tree this year from Santa is going to be a skibbity toilet. That is a shout out to TikTok culture right there. That is TikTok culture. You want to hear it's right before Christmas. I think people will like this story. So when I was younger, I have a younger sister, like 4 years younger. So, like, when she was, I don't remember what year this was. Maybe she was like 6, 7 years old. So I was like 11, maybe. And I got the bright idea. I had some rocks in my room. I don't know why, but before everybody went downstairs, I snuck downstairs and I put them in her stocking. So right at the top. So when we opened our gifts, got to the stocking, she I'm looking over because I know my parents have no idea.
Yeah.
So I'm like keeping an eye on her, and she's looking, and she looks, and just red and like immediate frown, and she's like, and it just kind of tries to sneak him away. My mom goes, "What is that, Rachel? Like, what are you doing?" And she's like kind of looks up, and it was, I feel bad now. She picks up the rock, and they're just tears. I lost it. My parents were dying laughing.
Oh my God.
And we had to explain that I put that in there as Cole, but definitely like ruined that Christmas, but a great story. I wish I had that on camera.
That's awesome.
So I could look like a real asshole. But this lineup, this Bruins lineup, you mentioned Patra. Patra's hot as anything. Wahlstrom, I'm curious to see what he can give. You're right. This makes guys expendable. This makes, and I think this sort of hits at the Frederic stuff. For weeks now, we've heard about how Trent Frederic has interest from other teams. UFA going into this offseason. And I was talking about this with Connor the other day, in that it's interesting because if he was producing at the rate he was last year, or even a little bit more, you'd say, okay, well, someone's probably going to give him a lot of money in the offseason. We might not be able to match that. So we can either overpay for Frederic, or we can say, you know what, we're going to do like we did with Jake DeBrusk and just get the most out of him for this playoff run. And, he leaves for nothing, but at least you get one good final year out of him.
Yeah.
Hasn't been the case this year. He's been underperforming the whole year. Barely noticed him against Calgary the other night. So he's been sort of a no-show at times this year. What's his value? What is his trade value? Because it feels like this is going to happen at some point. It's just, what are you getting back? Like, are you going for picks and prospects and you'll rely on like Wahlstrom or a Patra to take his place, which I think makes a little more sense? Or do you try to swap him for a player, which feels like something they would be more inclined to do since they're still in the playoff race?
Yeah, I think ideally they would probably swap him for another player and try to swap him for somebody that maybe had some term, or a younger player that they could hold on to for a couple of years. It would be interesting if it turned into a UFA for UFA kind of deal where you traded him for somebody else that's in a similar situation to Frederic. That maybe you thought you had a better chance of signing, or somebody that you wanted to look at before you maybe we're going to sign them as a free agent in the off season. So I think that is definitely an avenue they could go down. I'm just not sure, given his situation, like what kind of player you would get in return other than a like player, in a similar situation. Like, if I were going to move him, I might try to recoup draft picks or get a prospect.
That's what I would like them to do. I think that's a little smarter going forward.
I do, especially given their cap situation. I think that would be the right way to do it, is to, try to get as close to a first round pick as you can get to replace the first round pick you invested in him way back when, and I think that's kind of the way you should look at it, is trying to get back what you invested in him a long time ago. And I'm not sure they would get a late first round pick for Trent Frederic at this point. Maybe you would, because, for him and for the NHL, he's the kind of player that a lot of teams want. And there's not many of them out there that, are able to be a 20-goal level scorer and drop the gloves and play physical and, do the things that he does. He's a hitter. He's an intimidator at times. He's certainly a guy that will stand up for his teammates. He's a good teammate. He's got enough offense to at least, put up 20 and 40, somewhere in that range. I think that's what you can project him to be going forward in his late 20s. And there's not many of those guys in the NHL anymore. There's not many 20-goal, 100 penalty minute kind of guys in the league anymore. The Tom Wilsons of the league. Now, is he Tom Wilson? No. Is he that impactful? No. I don't. He has not consistently been able to be that guy, and there are times where you wonder if he wants to be that guy.
But the thing is, other NHL GMs might think, oh, we can get him to be that guy, and that's where the trade return comes in.
Correct, and maybe that's where the Bruins are at this point, is determining that he's not really that guy, and he's not going to be that guy, but maybe somebody else will believe he's that guy, or can be turned into that guy, or developed into that guy. And that he's the answer to their needs for that, and that you can get some value back. But if I were the GM of the Bruins, I would be happy getting back like what I invested in the first place to draft him. And I think that's kind of the way you look at it a lot of times in management with an asset like that, is trying to get back at the very least what you used to bring him in the first place. And I think for a team like the Bruins that has, traded away a lot of their first and second round picks, that's something you're trying to do anyway, is augment that treasure chest of prospects, replenish the prospects that you have, with assets you can get in a trade. I think the Bruins are getting to a point where they need to stop letting guys go away for nothing when they know they're not coming back. They did it with Torrey Krug. They did it with Jake DeBrusk. I think you need to start thinking, because if you're not in a legit Stanley Cup position, where you really think you're a contender, you should start being better with assets. Where if you're not signing a guy, if he's not coming back, get something for him at the deadline that you can at least replenish your organization and make yourselves better. Instead of a guy just walk for scot-free at the end and be like, oh, we tried, there was no runway, when it's obvious. it was obvious for a year Jake DeBrusk was not coming back. I think everybody knew. I had heard talk in training camp that he had like sold the place he was living in and was basically living on like people's couches or something that last year. It was like living in subletting at somebody's place. Like the Bruins had to know this, that he had already kind of made actions like he wasn't coming back and he knew he wasn't coming back. With Torrey Krug, I think it was similar. I think they knew for a long time they were not going to invest that kind of money in him that he was going to get on the open market.
Didn't they pull the offer they offered him too?
So if you feel that way about Trent Frederic, if you kind of know that that's the way it's going, he is. When I talked to him, and I wrote a story like about a month ago on him, he seemed to make a couple like pointed statements a few times about like he's always felt like he was sort of year to year with the Bruins. He's never felt security here. He's never like had that, anything but that feeling like, the other shoe could drop at any moment. And not having long-term security. So clearly, I think he's looking for a long-term contract, and I don't think the Bruins are going to give it to him. So I think he's going to get that somewhere else, and with the kind of money that somebody's going to pay him that I don't think the Bruins want to go there either. So if that's the case, and you've kind of made that determination, you think that's the way it's headed, like especially if you want to bring Patra up, if you have these other options, if there's things that you can do, and based on the season that he's having, maybe you pull the trigger and do that and just call it really good asset management and prudent asset management. But, it's tough because I think that would make a statement to some of the players and the veteran players that necessarily they wouldn't like. I think they probably want him around. He's a popular guy. They feel like he makes their team better. So you also have to weigh that part of it too. Are you really going to tip the scales or mess up the chemistry in the room or piss off all your veteran players by dealing a guy like that? Like, what kind of effect is it going to have on them? And this is what makes...
Well, yeah, like, look at the Rangers right now.
Right.
They dealt Trouba, and they're in, like, a nosedive.
This is what makes Don Sweeney's job really difficult, is trying to put all that stuff together while also being somewhat cold-blooded in doing what's best asset-wise and maximizing your assets and managing them in the right way. It's a difficult job that he has. I might lean towards trading Frederic if I knew he wasn't coming back and he wasn't part of the long-term plan, but easier said than done. And I like Freddie too. I wouldn't want to see him go. He's a great kid. But I just get the sense that much like I did with Krug and DeBrusk, that he's going to be playing somewhere else next year.
That's the thing. And I think you look at like people forget that around the trade deadline, packages get wacky. Teams overpay like crazy for assets they want to help them for the playoffs.
Yep.
And the other thing is like you hit it with like, the Bruins don't want to probably hand him a long-term contract with a lot of money, especially given the season he's had this year. Other teams might be are going to be more willing to probably do that.
Yep.
So the Bruins are not going to re-sign him. If to me, like of the three of guys you just mentioned, Krug, DeBrusk, and Frederic, maybe it's because it's right now and he's having a tough year. To me, out of those three is like the most that I look at and go, yeah, there's no way he's back next year. Like completely, it does not feel like there is a way. And
I could see him going to the Blues. I could see the Blues overpaying or really shelling out for a guy that he's from St. Louis. He's a local guy. They can trumpet that and they can, really make a marketing campaign around like a St. Louis kid that has made it and, they could bring back into the fold and be a Blues player. He could go play for Jim Montgomery, who I think he liked playing for. And I know Montgomery liked Frederic a lot because they had that St. Louis connection. So maybe something like that is already like in the long-term plans. Who the heck knows? But it just feels like something like that may end up happening with him, and it would.
Armstrong's talking to Frederic already too. He's got the whole, the whole place bugged.
I was laughing about somebody who right after the Montgomery thing. I'm like, oh, like a magic presto, 5-year contract offer. All of a sudden,
where'd that come from?
Amazing, like that came out of nowhere. It's just like boom, and it's done. Like, come on. This is why I think the NHL, like we've heard reports that they're starting to look into like the collusion stuff and, having conversations before things happen and back channels and all these kind of things because it happens all the time in the NHL. I think where all this stuff goes on and people know, you cannot convince me. I have zero proof of this, but you cannot convince me that Jim Montgomery did not know he had something with St. Louis in the back pocket if and when something happened.
Oh, yeah.
There was zero question in my mind that he
I think it was
obvious.
It was obvious when they only extended Bannister after the Bruins beat the Leafs. last year. To me, that's like the tell, and they don't care. Like it's like they don't care. You know, it is what it is, and I agree with you. I think now, you know, after hearing stuff myself, like I think the same thing, and I don't have like definitive proof. I can't, you know, I can't. It's like a conspiracy, right? Like can't prove it, but the Earth is flat.
Yeah,
I'm kidding. The moon is made of cheese, okay? But like I do think that there was collusion there for sure. Like when Montgomery's like, oh, you know, Army called me, and I thought it was just, you know, like good luck, man.
Yeah, sure.
It's like, yeah, okay, buddy, you answered that call like with a suit on, all right? Like no way. You had your game plan ready to go. But yeah, I mean, Frederic, like just my final thing on that is like, I agree. Like if you do sell him off for picks and prospects, or picks or prospects, you know, you do send a message of, you know, does the front office feel like this is a playoff team? And that can kind of put some doubt in some guys. But I also think they went out, they got Wahlstrom, Patra's coming up. Like the options might just be internal.
Yeah.
Well, and I think they're going to
and I think they will make a move at the deadline for some kind of winger too. Like I think that's like
just
an offense
please
kind of player.
Please don't deal your first. Please don't.
No, I don't think they'll do that.
Be smart.
I understand
please.
With that. I would seriously doubt that they're gonna. This will be, you know, one of those Don Sweeney like where
Lee Stempniak
refuses to give up the first round pick. And they get a player maybe that wants to come here. Like, don't forget, they didn't give up a first-round pick for Taylor Hall. You know, like there have been times where they know that they don't want to give that up, and they're not going to give that up, and they don't. And I think this is going to be one of those years.
It's going to have to be. Haggs, what can the people look forward to from you over the next couple weeks?
More coverage at bostonsportsjournal.com. So get a subscription to that and get all the awesome coverage from everybody over there. Greg Bedard, Mike Giardi, myself, Cast of Thousands, doing great things, covering all the 4 sports teams. Still posting all the time over at my Substack, joehaggerty.substack.com. So subscribe, get yourself a premium membership. You get all of my NHL and Bruins writing sent straight directly to your inbox. And I will also be at a hockey rink near you at assorted youth hockey games, both boys and girls, and plenty of Valley League stuff. We have a Tuesday morning New Year's Eve game at Hockeytown. Like I can't wait for that
hilarious.
one. 8:30 in the morning, I will be at Hockeytown on New Year's Eve. So if you want to come say hello to me, I will be there coaching. It'll be a good time.
I would
bring
love
the
to,
mimosas. I'll have a post-game mimosa after the game is over.
No, drink on the bench. I think USA Hockey allows that, right?
Yeah,
that's cool. They're cool with that.
We'll be doing it in the stands.
Oh, without a doubt. Oh my God, yeah. The eggnog will be passed around. But Haggs, always a pleasure. I'll see you around. Thank you for doing this. And that's Bruins Beat. I'm Evan Marinofsky. Bruins Beat listeners, have a great rest of your week.